I think we're on live, Stace. I'm not sure if it actually worked, but hopefully we're on Instagram Live on our account. I haven't done this for a long time. The technology's changed a little bit. But anyway, welcome everybody that's listening to the webinar, everybody that's hopefully on Instagram Live. Hi. Let us know where you're coming in from, people that are on live. And also, as we're going through, I have like a billion questions for Bran. North Carolina, awesome. But feel free to post them in the chat also, and we'll get to them as soon as possible as we're talking through this. Hi. Okay, you on? You're good?
Yeah.
Okay, we're just gonna roll with it. Okay, so Bree and I really want to dive into how she got started as a mental performance coach. Now, we've talked about this in some other areas, so I do want to like take it to a couple different places, but we did promise those 5 steps. And I think for so many people, Brian, they see you and they're like, oh my God, I want what she has. Like,
Right.
there's just like, I want that huge business. And I really think that that is so helpful from a motivation standpoint. And like, they dream of doing what you're doing, which I know you dreamed about for a while too, but also like the
Mhm.
how and the like breaking it down into really like micro steps, I think is so important because the way that you did it, like at least in the beginning, is like so very doable for just really almost anybody, right? Like you just
Mhm.
decided you wanted to do it. And so I want to break it down because you obviously had success like really fast, but you also did like very simple actionable things in the beginning. And so if
Mhm.
you can, I just want to go into how you decided to get certified, like why you decided to, maybe what else you were considering, like walk us through it. And we talked about it a little bit on the webinar the other day, but like
Mhm.
as you were like in your house trying to figure out, okay, I want to do this, like what do I do? Do I do a course? Do I get like talk me through like the decision?
Yeah. Yeah. As I shared before, I don't know how many people were on last time, but I'll just share again. I was a teacher, I was a high school teacher teaching health and PE, and a head volleyball coach. I still am the head volleyball coach at the same school that I was back when I became certified in 2019. And honestly, the first thing that inspired me was like, as a coach myself, I was having a hard time teaching the mental side of the game to my own team. Like we were losing to teams and losing games due to mental errors. And I was like, I know this is not a physical thing, but like I don't really know how to teach this. So that's like what started everything. And then I have always been a little passionate like about this side of the game because I studied it a little bit in my undergrad. I experienced it as a player myself. I have my own story as a college athlete. And so when I found Lindsay's program, I was like, oh, this is super interesting. And like not only can I teach this to my athletes, but in the back of my mind, I've always been like super entrepreneurial and, I had always dreamt of like having my own business. I say I like kind of fell into coaching and teaching because that's also what I'm super passionate about. But I was like, this would be awesome if I could I was thinking so small at the beginning. I sent a text actually to my sister-in-law, who's my business partner. And I was like, what if I was like the go-to mental training person just for like my town, and
Right.
like I could train teams because other athletes need this information. So that's kind of where I was at. And I had considered some other options. The thought ran through my head of like, do I go back to school to like get a PhD? I already had a master's. I was already a full-time teacher for like 8 years. I was like, do I get like a PhD in this to teach it? And I'm like, I do not want to spend another $60,000 and spend another like 5 years to do this. Um, and then there were a few other certifications that were similar to Lindsay's. And like I don't know if we want to dive into that, but I just felt a lot more drawn to the way that Lindsay was teaching. I was drawn to the fact that she was a female in this space doing it. I just aligned more with her messaging because in this field of like mental training, you can kind of go on the path of like mental toughness and it's very masculine.
Yep.
And like I never really related with that. My girls, I'm like, here, sit down and listen to this like dude who's like talking about football and you got to grind it out and don't care about your emotions. Like it just like didn't vibe with me. So I knew that I was aligned to like Lindsay's method and her teaching and all of that. So that's where I stood. I wanted to do it. And obviously there were some other hurdles that we can get into.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I
Okay,
stood.
cool. Okay, so that's the decision. Okay. And guys, again, if you guys have any specific questions about any of these steps, I think talk me through the mindset of deciding. So, when I'm talking to people, I talk about deciding and then I talk about committing, right? So like you decide, okay, I'm gonna do this, and then you actually put your money down, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes that's like immediate, right? You decide and then you pay. And for you, I know it was decide, probably talk to your husband, like figure out how to pay for it. Like, but you like a lot of people I think don't decide and then hope that it comes together. Like you decided, from what I remember, you
Mhm.
decided and then you figured out how. Do you remember that gap in what you did and how you thought through it?
Yeah, I remember specifically thinking like, if I don't do this, what am I going to do? Like, this is still going to be an issue for my team. And then I was also like excited about this idea of I could help other teams and I could like maybe even what if this turned into like a side hustle? Like I always kind of have that. And I'm like, well, if I don't do anything, like how am I ever going to do that? Like, so I think that was what caused me to decide is I'm like, nothing's going to change in a year.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to be in the same spot and I'm going to be frustrated again. So like I need to do something different. And so I decided like this is what I want to do. But obviously it was a financial commitment and my husband is a teacher as well and he's a coach. And so I was like, okay, what do we do? And I only share, and I've shared this before, I only share it because like this is the way my brain works is like if I'm going to decide to do something, I'm going to figure out how to do it. And
Yeah.
like that's just kind of always been my mindset. And so although it was like money that I mean, it's not like we didn't have it, but at the same time, it was like a stretch for us. I was like, what other resources do I have? What can I tap into? And so, as a teacher, I had professional development funds. I got reimbursed for $1,000 of it because I was also using this in my classroom. Um, Booster Club also paid for me paid for part of the certification because I was using this with my team. So it was like, professional development, but also it was a tool that my team was going to use. And
Hmm.
so I think that paid for another like $500 or so. And then I shared this. I know people have different thoughts on like debt and all of this, but I did open up a credit card and like we're very financially responsible. But I was like, hey, there's a opening bonus of this credit card for like $500 if you
Yeah.
spend X amount. And so I was like, sure, got another $500 off, paid it off, like paid the credit card off, like in a month or something like that. So I didn't get any extra interest or anything like that. So I ended up only having to pay like out of my own pocket for about half of the certification, after all that was said and done. And we can get into it later, but I mean, the certification paid for itself within 6 months. So
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
mhm.
Okay, so that was the decision piece. Then we moved into like you were in the certification and you were like, who am I going to work with and like what? I mean, obviously in the certification we talk about this, but
Mhm.
figuring that piece out of like who you're going to work with and what problem you're solving. Like that is such a big piece that a lot of people skip over. I think a lot of people are like mental performance training, let me go like it's so important and we're all so passionate about it, but they don't actually dial in. And we talked about this on Wednesday, like the problem that they're solving for the person that they're solving it for. And I know you kind of dabbled a little bit, which a lot of people do. How did you dial in to your current, I know you have a couple now, but like your main customer, what problem you're solving, and like talk me through how you decided the messiness of that, like, yeah, just all of that process.
Yeah, I like everybody and most entrepreneurs was like, I want to serve everybody. Like, this is good for coaches, this is good for
Yep.
all athletes, good for teams,
Hmm.
and quickly realized that like those are all very different audiences
Right.
and how you talk to them and what their pain points are and all of that is like way different. And so
Yeah.
I, like you say, fished in the pond that I was in. I am a volleyball coach and have a lot of connections in the community as a coach. I was a club coach as well, on the board at the club that I coach, like all these things. And so I'm like, I'm gonna like serve the population that I have right in front of me, and that is volleyball players and girl volleyball players. And so
Yeah.
I knew I wanted to specifically serve girl athletes just because of like the unique struggles that girls go through in sport. And so I knew I was tied to that. I didn't actually niche all the way down to volleyball, but those were just my first
Yeah.
clients because that is who I was working with. And so,
Yeah.
and that was
Yeah.
like the most easily accessible. And so
Yeah.
it was kind of a combination of like, I was passionate about girl athletes, but then also had to realize like, if you're talking to everybody, you're talking to nobody. And so, although like now, 7-ish years later, now we just got another audience of like we just
Right.
started talking to coaches like but that took like 7 years of
Yep.
building up the other like our main audience so
Yeah. I do remember though, like you were thinking about different, you had done, I think, some corporate speaking maybe first. And I
yeah
remember like I feel like a lot of people come in and they'd like maybe they've tried all these different things and it's a little bit, I don't know if it was for you. I shouldn't say that. A lot
Mhm.
of people, it's scary to be like, oh no, no, we're going this direction, working with this people, solving this one problem. Did you have that sort of hesitation at all?
Oh, for sure. And honestly, I still get comments like all the time from people
Oh,
that are like, why do you still work with, why do you only work with girl athletes? And like,
yeah.
do you not, are you a man hater? Um, like all the time. I literally just this morning, like cleared a bunch of Facebook comments that were about that. And um,
Oh my God.
it's like, yeah, it was scary for me too, because it's like, well, if you were to open up your messaging, you would get so many more clients. And yeah,
yeah,
we were kind of in like the corporate world. My sister-in-law is my business partner and she can't, her background is in corporate. And so we were kind of like also like this, helping women leaders be
yep,
more effective leaders. And so we were dabbling in that for a little bit because, that's where some of our passions were. But we were like, this is just like, where are we going here? And so we decided to
yeah,
go like all in. And yeah, it was scary at first because we're like, are we niching too much? But like the thing about it
yeah,
is like we no, like we were able to build a multi seven figure business because we niched
yep,
that hard.
yeah,
Because when we talk, we like moms know that we're talking to them.
yep,
And so yeah, like yeah, of course we get comments all the time. And my thought is always like, you don't go into like a shop that sells candles and be like, you know what? You would actually sell a lot more if you sold toilet paper in here too. Like, why don't
right.
you sell toilet paper? And so I
Yeah.
always think like, no, we're steadfast on like we know exactly what this audience is and what they talk about. So yeah, it was scary at first, but like it's definitely the way to go.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I totally remember you going through that process, and I think it's hard because one, you are scared, and also you're kind of like, but this applies to everybody, and like I do actually
Mhm.
do enjoy some like I love empowering female people in the in the females in the workplace, but like
Yeah.
you do really need to find your people and
Yeah.
solve a problem, and you guys did that so well. Okay, so you can solve a problem, and then we obviously have to have, or you can talk about solving a problem, but you actually have to solve it, right? And the solution that you came up with, like, talk me through the elite competitor and like the tools that you learned and how you combine maybe the tools of the certification with you and your experience and really find making it yours and your voice. Because I think a lot of people, it's like they come into any of our trainings and are like, they probably tried to do it on their own and gotten like so overwhelmed, and like the scaffolding that like a curriculum can help you make your own. Talk to me
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, and that was one of the main reasons I joined the program is because I like could piece things together, but I also like pay. I always tell people this, like I pay for time too. Like that would take me so much more time to try and like piece all of it together to learn it myself. And I don't even know if it's valid or proven or tested. And so like this was tested, proven, there was a roadmap. I was a teacher, so I liked that there was like curriculum and like learning outcomes and like there was like a sequential way for athletes to learn it. And so that was key for me. It's like I know it's important, but I don't know how to teach it and I don't have time to go figure it all out. And so that was all like packaged. And I mean, on the business side of it, like I was able to utilize the tools that I learned to create our own version of things based on my experience as an athlete, my experience as a coach, what my athletes need. So all of that, like having a foundation and like even I think just like the first three lessons, like when I was working with one-on-one athletes, like having here your first three, like one-on-one, here's
Yep.
basically like what you're going to go over with
Yep.
them
Yeah.
was just so helpful. So,
Yeah, yeah, the three section outline for sure. Okay, so guys, those of you that I can't see Instagram comments, so there might be some coming in. I don't know.
good point.
But yeah, so obviously be sure to, but we can go back and do comments later, guys. So if you
Yeah.
are watching Instagram, like put your questions in, or I guess as a comment. And if you're watching live, I think this is the place where a lot of people have a ton of questions. So we've gone through the first steps, which is you deciding who you're going to work with and what problem you're going to solve, figuring out what that solution was. And also, I will also say, I know you know this or feel this way too, Bree, is like, guys, like, we give you a curriculum, but like, there's going to be so many versions of
Yeah.
how you help people, and it's going to iterate over time. And, the nice thing about having a curriculum is you're like jumping off from like way further along than you would be anyway, right? If you were just
Mhm.
staring at a blank page.
Yeah.
But it's also still a process, right? And
Mhm.
like that's part of our process too, is iterating. Like every time you work with a client, you're like, take this in, put this out. Like it's all, and that's part of like the art of it, of like, so my point is like, I always try to show my like ugly old like first workbook, like since
Oh
we're
yeah,
on video, like that was my first one, like, 20 years ago. But
I
like,
love that.
you know what I mean? Like this was what I taught. And guess what, people? It was okay. Like
Yeah.
it wasn't beautiful. It's not what it is. I mean, you look at we just redid our workbooks. Our workbooks now are like something I'm so proud of because they're so beautiful. But like you don't get to that without like the messiness of those first few clients. The nice
Yeah.
thing is you're not starting at, like I said, you're not starting from scratch. You're not staring at a blank page. So I just want to say that. And now we're into step 4, which again, I think a lot of people are going to have questions about this, but it's really coming up with your first offer. That means pricing, packaging, like how you learned to do that. What was
Mhm.
your process in doing that? Like, talk to me about that.
Yeah. Thankfully you teach that. I mean, obviously what our pricing, our structure, and our offer now is a lot different. But like when I first started out, I would have gone with like the normal thing of, well, what's your hourly rate? Like that's kind of
Right. Yeah.
what you naturally think of when you think of like especially one-on-one coaching. But the fact that you were able to show us like, no, it's like, value-based pricing, and you're paying for like people who hire you are paying for the transformation and all of this. Like I had no, because I don't have any business background. Like now I do, but I
Yeah.
didn't. And so
Right.
I'm being able to learn like different pricing structures. Like I just literally took that from you. And then those of you that know our company know that now we have an online program that athletes go through, and we just had to like test that. So we had to test pricing. We had to do like some, we do some founders offers. Like there's a lot that went into that, where you can kind of test what the good price point is for what you're offering. But when I first started out, literally, Lindsay, it was like what you taught us. So,
Yeah.
and people paid for it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Mhm.
talk a little bit about the the mindset that goes into that. So like we taught you the value-based pricing and the different ways to think about pricing, but the mindset of actually putting an offer out there into the world, and maybe even talk a little bit about the community of you had your peers, you had your captains, like, and everybody's talking about packaging and pricing. Like talk to me about how that um influenced your pricing or your mindset about pricing.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely normalized it. I mean, you also kind of have to go through your own like money things
Yeah.
in your mind of like, why do you not feel like you're worth that much to hire?
Yeah.
So like there's like all of that that goes behind it that your brain tries to sabotage you with. But having other people in it with me who were also charging similar rates, or had like just kind of having examples of people who were
Yeah.
going out to their own community and getting feedback was so invaluable. Because if I didn't have that, I would just be like, I don't know what I would do, probably like scouring the internet and like, are other people doing this?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was very helpful. And then also helpful just because when I first started, and those of you that were on the other call know, like I went to a meeting at the club that I was on the board for, and just kind of pitched an 8-week live group coaching opportunity for the athletes in this club to parents. And so I had to figure out like what I was going to charge for that. And like what the offering is, and how do I collect email addresses, and how do I all of this.
Yeah.
And like my community, you, Lindsay, like I was able to like run my pitch past you, run the pricing proposal past you, just so I knew like it was good to go. And it worked. Like
Yeah.
I think I charged $500 for that offering, which is super cheap actually for what it
Yeah.
was now that I look back. But yeah, I had 10 people sign up, and that was like 5 grand right there. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, that math. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was
Yeah.
just so helpful, like to not navigate this on my own.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this brings us to step 5, which is how and where you got your first client. And I think,
Hmm.
the what we always say, and people that have like seen anything about us is like your clients, your future clients are in your life right now.
Hmm.
Like
Yes.
I have trained a lot of people, and everybody's first clients are already the people they already know.
Hmm.
But as you know, that can be like the most terrifying thing to hear,
Yeah, it's
actually.
almost harder.
Yeah, because you're like, oh no, I
Yeah.
have to like, I don't know, like nobody wants to sell people that they already know. But talk me through like how you got those first clients, the mentality of it, like what was going on through your mind, like how you got the bravery to do it. Like talk to me through all that.
hmm Yeah, for sure. I had all those doubts of like, I don't want to come across as one of those like girls from high school that are selling their MLMs to somebody. Like, that's not what we're doing. Like this is actually a legit
Yeah.
like service that I'm selling. It's not
Yeah.
like anything like that. But I think what it came down to is whenever I would talk about it, people would respond with like, "Oh my gosh, this is so needed." And like honestly, that's why people who are here are here because you're
Yeah.
like, "This is so needed. I see the need in my kids' team. I see the need in my own athlete. I see the need in my community." And so everybody that I was sharing like what I was doing with was so receptive to like, "Oh my gosh, this is like what we need." And so I was like, okay, it is what people want. So there's that. And then when I was speaking about it, like at this parent meeting, I think just like the passion and like people want to hear like why you're doing what you're doing and how it can help their kid, obviously. But like the passion of my own story a little bit. Not that people want to like you don't want to go super deep into like talking about yourself and all those
Yeah.
things, but they can relate with it because like as I was telling my story of like being a high school athlete and a college athlete and struggling with the mental side of the game, they saw their kid in that. And
Yep.
so I think that connected really well with
Hmm.
them. But I think that the biggest thing was like they were finally like, okay, there's like hope for for my athlete. And that these skills go so beyond
Yeah.
sports. And so that's what
Yeah.
every parent wants ultimately is that their kid has confidence and can advocate for themselves in their sport, but also in their life. So I
Yeah.
think that's some of that, just reminding myself that like this is good work that
Yeah.
that is needed.
Yeah. I love that exercise that we've done before where it's like you not only think about your why, but you think about like the one person that needs to
Mhm.
hear your message. And a lot of times that's your younger self or
Yeah.
someone else that you care about in your life. And you're like, they need me to get over my SHIT to
Mhm.
like, so they can hear the message that really can only come from me. And it sounds like that was what you dialed into because I think that's like a really powerful, if you're going to stand in front of a room of people and ask them to work with you, like it's really nice to have a deep-seated like belief that this is the right thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. So those are the 5 steps, guys. Deciding to get certified or deciding what to do to it's almost like you were deciding what to do to get the skills that you needed. It's not
Yeah.
necessarily, and then you found the certification. Okay. What problem you were solving and for who? What solution that was, coming up with your first offer, and then going and getting your first client. So guys, those are the 5 steps. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit now about this actually kind of like dives into what you were saying with like all of us, everybody probably watching is like, there is such a huge need for this. But
Mhm.
I also know having been on, the certification application calls this week is like, there's also like this need to make sure that the market will sustain. Like if I want to get started, I want to make sure there's a market for it, right?
Right.
And I think sometimes people are like, oh my God, there's so many mindset and mental performance coaches. Like, am I too late? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say no, because there's just still so much need, and there's also need for your specific angle and
Right.
your specific what like thing that you're offering.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, I mean, I had that thought too. I'm like, there's literally like nobody else though in my I don't
Yeah.
know. We
Yeah.
live in the same state, but like in my county that I can think of
Yeah.
that is doing this work. So
Right.
like you think that there's a lot maybe because you see other people on Instagram potentially, but like
Yeah.
obviously you're not copying people, but at the same time like you have your unique spin on things and
Yeah.
your unique experience and your way to connect with athletes or teams or whoever you're working with.
Yeah.
Um so yeah, I don't you always say like the world needs more mental performance coaches and I agree because there's still so many athletes and teams who don't have these skills. So
Yeah, totally. And I will say, like, I was talking about it yesterday on Instagram because I heard it from like 2 different people. And I was like, as you mentioned, like if you are interested in mental performance coaching, like the algorithm knows it. And so you're
Mhm.
like seeing the 10 of us that exist, right? Like all
Right.
over the time. Maybe it's more than that, but you're seeing
Yeah.
it like all over the place. You're like, everybody's a mental performance coach. But like, honestly, if you go to like a gym in your community or your kids club or whatever, like how many of those athletes in real life have mental performance coaches? And I
Right.
would say like probably less than 5%. It might even be less than that.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? And
I agree.
so actually in real life, there's such a huge need. Okay.
Mhm.
Um, I want to talk about like for you the time commitment, like when you joined. I'm sure like all of us, you were very busy and thinking like, how much time does this take? Can I do it with a job and a family? And like maybe I should do this another time because it never really feels like the right time for most people,
Mhm.
right? Like how did you like think through that? Maybe what you would say to yourself now, like anybody that's like got a lot going on and feels like, ah, I need to do this later, or like talk to me about the time commitment.
Yeah. I mean, that's always a thing, like in everything that you're doing.
Yeah.
But I was like, "Ugh, if it's not going to happen now, it's not going to happen a year from now." So,
Yeah.
or however long. So yeah, and honestly, I think you say it's like 3 to 5 hours a week. And it was during the summer for me. So I was a teacher, so I technically had the summer off.
Yeah.
But it was still coaching and doing all sorts of things. So I was able to fit it into my schedule a lot easier than maybe I would have if I wasn't teaching. However, you just make it work. Like there's been countless things that I've like
Yeah.
invested in and done and like things like that where I'm like, yeah, time is always, especially those of us that are parents, like it's always a thing.
Yeah.
Um, but I kept thinking like I'm going to waste more time later. Like the
Yeah.
time is going to be taken from me either way because I'm going to be spending time like trying to figure this out with my team or being frustrated or whatever. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, it's just one of those things that like once you decide, you figure it out. You figure out how to make it
Because
work.
you had a, how
Mhm.
old was your oldest? Like a year or something
Yeah, she
when,
must have been a year. Yeah,
yeah.
I sometimes I'm like she's 6. Yeah, no, she was a year old.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
Um, so I wanted to go back to like and I don't know if you're how comfortable you are talking about this, but I
yeah.
noticed also like the spouse conversation, right? And you and
Mhm.
I know I talk to so many people that apply and enroll in the certification, and men and women, you know, they everyone wants to talk to their spouse about money, and that's like great, right? But I
Yeah.
also notice that there seems to be a little bit of a difference between how men approach it and how women. And mostly I want to talk about the the confidence that it takes to really go for your goals and deciding that you're worth investing in and not asking for permission to commit to something, because I think a lot of women are like, oh, this money could go to my kids. This money is really family money. And prioritizing their dreams in that conversation can be so challenging. I don't know if you have any insight into that. It's a little bit of an
Mhm.
off the wall conversation or question, but I do see
Yeah.
it coming up a lot. And I think it's a little bit of uh, yeah, it's like a microcosm of like some of these bigger issues that I see happening. But I don't know what your thoughts are about that.
Yeah. I think, yeah, all of that crossed my mind. And I'm like, yeah, this is a big investment for our family. As far as like the spouse conversation, I don't know. My husband has always been really supportive of like, you'll figure it out. And if I tell him like this is what I want to do and this is what I'm thinking of and how I see it helping our family, helping me, and he could see how passionate I was, like he was on board with it. So
Yeah.
we don't really have that as much. I know that's a big thing in some relationships where it's like, okay, this is a bigger conversation. Um, for us, it wasn't
But
as big, but
But do you think that some of that was because you already felt confident that you could make the money back? Like you had already kind
Mhm.
of decided, you'd already figured out like maybe some ways to get creative. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you had said, like, I can totally make this money back.
Yeah. Yeah. And I had a way to like pay for it.
Yeah.
So, in my mind, I'm like, it's actually not, ends up not being as much. And like, I really think I could make this back. So, yeah, because of all of that, not that I had to like present a plan to him, like that's just not how our
Right.
relationship works. But,
Yeah.
I just was confident in myself. And I
Yeah.
also, he just knew like, okay, this is something that she wants to do. And
Yeah.
oh, we can do it. So, but yeah, there
Yeah.
is always that like obviously money can be spent in a lot of different ways. And this is like
Yeah.
all on me. And
Yeah.
I kind of was like, do
Yeah.
I have to justify how this is going to help our family down the road? And
Yeah.
I don't know. I always think like any investment that you're doing in yourself is helping your family and
Yeah.
serving your kids and your marriage because you are improving yourself. And so
Yeah.
I kind of always thought of it like
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
I love that. I love that. Okay, I don't know how much of this is applicable to you. I know that you have like an entrepreneur instinct and Some people come to us having tried other things, right? Like they've done other certifications or courses. Maybe they've had other businesses. And to be frank, a lot of people find us and they're like, oh my God, this is what I've been looking for. But maybe they feel like they've wasted money before or failed at other things.
Hmm.
And I know you like since the certification have like invested a lot in, coaching and growing your business and learning. I don't know if you came in with any of that, I don't want to say baggage, but things that you've tried before, or if that like influenced or gave you any sort of pause or hesitation.
Yeah. What was funny? Well, the kind of the business venture that I was on with my sister-in-law, I mean, like we're still business partners, but before even I got certified, we were kind of doing this like in this women's coaching space and
Yeah.
didn't really work out. So the passion was there, but didn't have like
Yeah.
what we needed to actually like make that fit. Looking back now with all the experience I have, and like I can clearly see. But even before that, I actually don't like I don't think I've ever shared this, but I invested in like a online Facebook ads course
Hmm.
with the thought that I was going to like help online entrepreneurs with their Facebook ads. Um, and that didn't work out. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I actually ended up being able to use the knowledge from that course in like
That
what
you
is
did.
now my business, but
Yeah.
like didn't know that at the time.
Yeah.
But at the time I was like, I'm going to learn all this and I'm going to help like other people run their Facebook ads. And yeah, I didn't. And so yeah, those two things like were pretty close to each other. And honestly, I think both of that was like a deep-seated like I don't love teaching, like I
Yeah.
liked it, but I was like always kind of looking for a different thing, like a thing that
Hmm.
could supplement so I could go part-time or a thing that I could like do to slowly get out of teaching, but those things weren't my passion. And so when I found
Yeah.
this, I was like, this is my passion. Like I would absolutely love to do this full time.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's where it kind of clicked. And not to say that it's not been easy, like it's definitely been hard to like build a
Right.
business out of this. To the scale that we have it now. Like
Right.
there's a lot of different ways it can look. So, but yeah, I definitely had my share of entrepreneurial failures before this.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think sometimes that like kind of worries people in the sense of like, oh my God, am I gonna not follow through with this? Or
Yeah.
is this the another thing that like gets me kind of there, but not all the way there?
Hmm.
And like I said, I know you've done so much afterwards, but like the certification in and of itself, tell me how that like prepared you to have a business doing this. Again, you've done other things since then, but like
Uh-huh.
the core of your like baby business, if you will,
Hmm.
that like how did the certification help you do that? Because I think that's kind of what sometimes people's fear is like, well, I did this other things, they weren't enough or they weren't right. Is this gonna be another one that's not quite enough or it's not quite right?
Yeah. That's why this was also helpful is that I got like my training wheels on like how to like do the business side of it at the beginning. And like you said, I've invested a lot in like just the version of what we wanted our company to look like. But at the beginning, like I didn't know what to charge. I didn't know like what anything. And so the fact that you also had like a step by step on like how to start your business and how to start a career in this was also like super helpful because it's not I mean, there's kind of two parts to it. Like, yeah, you can just take what you learn and like apply it to your teams and all of that. But for those of us that were like, why not? Like, why not also train
Yeah.
this team down the road? Like, not my competitor, but like this, why not train my athletes who live two doors down the road and who have like, she's going off to play college in 2 years and like she needs this
Mhm.
mental support, like if you're doing this already and you have the skills, you might as well like offer it
Yeah.
to the
Yeah.
people who are like looking for it. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. All right. And then I really want to dive into, one of the things that I don't know that I'm trying to talk about it more because I just every time I do a certification or watch somebody graduate or build their business, like the thing that like gets me the most fired up and the thing that gets them most fired up is yes, it's amazing to make money. It's amazing to have a business and the life and the freedom and all those sorts of things. But especially for women, because that's my jam, is like they get to be the person that is capable of making money. Right. And
mhm.
like that skill set, no one can ever take it from you. Like you're fully self-sufficient. You're not reliant on a spouse or a boss or the economy. Like you get to do it for yourself.
Yeah.
And that realization is like, oh man, that's like the coolest thing. So
Hmm.
talk to me, if you will, just about that, like who you are as a woman now versus the person that was like thinking about doing this.
Hmm. Yeah, I would say what's ironic is, I started this so that I could give these confidence skills to my athletes, and I feel like I got it myself. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely feel more confident in just in that. I've had that realization too before, of like I can like generate my own income. Like I can make money. Um, and which is pretty cool. Like there's times where it's like, I've traded the 9 to 5 for the 24/7, but
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
also know that like, I mean, my son's homesick right now and I can be there with him.
Yeah.
I can take time off without it impacting like how much I'm getting paid. I can make more. There's no
Yeah.
limit to my earning potential, which there was in teaching. Like the only way you can earn more is if you just stay in it for 30 years. I
Right.
mean, there's obviously like perks to both and downsides to
Yeah.
both, but I prefer being in charge and in control of
Yeah.
like my future and what I'm creating and the life I'm creating for myself.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. That's like so fun to watch people go through that process because I think
Hmm.
a lot of people get into the certification or really any kind of like, jump into something new and they're like, well, not all of it, but a lot of it is like, well, I get to help people and I get to make money. Like, that's amazing. And like the thing that maybe sometimes surprises them, and really what they were looking for all along, I believe, is
Hmm.
like the transformation in themselves that somehow
Hmm.
that, I was talking about a little bit on Instagram this morning. Like, I feel like so many, and I don't know if you're seeing this, you're probably seeing this with your sports moms, but like the feeling of like kind of losing yourself a little bit, the
Hmm.
feeling of like giving so much, you're probably, you're giving to your kids, your students, your athletes, you were probably giving, and like it kind of feels like, well, what about me? Like, what about my goals? Did you experience that
Yeah.
at all?
Yeah. I did. Because like I said, there was this little nagging part of me that was like, I
Hmm.
don't know if I want to be teaching forever. And so,
Yeah.
like what can I do to invest in myself? And so, yeah, that's kind of where I felt it was like, I don't really want my life to look like this forever.
Yeah.
And um, yeah, so it kind of came from that place too, that like this offered a little bit of a door to a little like more of the freedom that I was looking for as
Yeah.
well.
I love
So
that, Brie. Well, and you're now the example of that for so many people. So it's so
yeah.
cool. And now you have two kids and you're doing this full time and you're like impacting so many people, which is like so cool because now you get that ripple effect. And I know
Mhm.
you get so much amazing feedback on your program. So that's awesome.
Yes. Well, thank
Yeah,
you. I mean, I
absolutely.
wouldn't be doing it if I
That's
if
why
I
we're
didn't take
here,
that step.
guys.
So,
Yeah, it's the ripple effect. Okay, so guys, applications are open to the certification. As promised, we will comment below. So if you have any questions for
mhm.
me or Bree, certainly put those below. Applications are open. Go to positiveperformancetraining.com. It's on there, but it's also /MCA certification. Applications close tonight. Um, and let's see, it's a 16-week program. So yeah, we'll put it in the chat. It's in the chat. It'll be in the comments as well. It's also all over our bio and all
Mhm.
that kind of stuff. It's a 16-week program. We take you through 3 phases and yeah, we get started really soon. So if you're watching this later, I don't know, we might be open, we might not be. But as of today, we are open and you get your application in by tonight to enroll for our next certification this spring. So, Bree, any final thoughts?
I mean, I always when I was sitting in your chair, those of you that are listening, it was the whole like, what's going to change if nothing changes? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's one of the best bets I've made on myself and, just having a roadmap and doing the work on myself. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Cool.
that's
All right.
helpful.
Thank you so much, Bree. And thank you everybody for joining live and watching the replay. Put your questions below and we'll get to them. Everybody have a great day.
See you
Bye.
later.